No one in that crowded bar had any idea what was about to happen. Not the bartender, polishing a glass behind the counter. Not the group of bikers laughing loudly near the entrance. Not even the man who had just decided to test Steven Seagal's limits. It started with a single, careless smirk. The biker leaned forward, loud enough for everyone to hear, and said something meant to provoke, something mocking. "So, you really think you're tough?" He jeered, nodding at Steven, a grin full of arrogance and challenge. The noise in the room didn't stop immediately. Glasses clinked, a drink spilled, a laugh escaped someone across the room. But then something strange happened. The laughter faltered, conversation slowed. Even the music felt muted, like the bar itself was holding its breath. Steven Seagal didn't react right away. He sat quietly, almost blending into the corner booth, his wife beside him. He didn't shout. He didn't leap from his seat. Instead, he looked at the man with calm, unshakable eyes. Eyes that seemed to weigh the biker, measure his intent, and silently warn him that he had just crossed a line he might regret. The biker saw the gaze, and for a fraction of a second, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. But pride and arrogance are hard to kill. He smirked again, thinking the man in the corner would do nothing. He had no idea what quiet power really looked like. The tension in the bar thickened. Patrons stopped mid-sip. A few turned their heads, sensing that the air itself had changed. Even the bartender paused, towel in hand, eyes narrowing, as he realized something was about to go very wrong, or very right. Then the biker leaned in, even closer, speaking louder, crueler, as if daring the room to stop him. "Come on, old man," he sneered. "What are you gonna do?" The room went utterly silent. Not a whisper, not a movement. The energy shifted from casual noise to expectant tension. Everyone felt it. The moment before a storm. And in that silence, in the calm before chaos, one thing was already clear. Whoever had the control would define what happened next. Have you ever seen a single moment in public where everything felt normal, and then completely shifted? The bar was alive with the usual Friday night chaos, but it was the kind of chaos that felt safe. Music thumped through the walls, a mix of classic rock and the occasional modern beat that made a few heads nod and toes tap. Laughter bounced off the wood-paneled walls. Glasses clinked, bartenders slid drinks across the counter with practiced ease, and servers moved between tables, balancing trays like tightrope walkers. Steven Seagal sat quietly in the corner, almost invisible in his casual clothing. A simple shirt, comfortable pants, and sunglasses perched lightly on his nose. He wasn't here for attention, didn't need to be recognized. Just another man trying to enjoy a quiet evening with his wife. She sat beside him, sipping her drink, smiling softly at something only she understood. For them, this night was meant to be ordinary, uneventful. Around them, the bar continued its usual rhythm. Groups of friends laughed loudly, telling stories they had probably told 100 times before. A few patrons argued playfully over sports. The jukebox cycled through songs, as if nothing could disturb this calm, to anyone watching. It looked like a perfect, ordinary Friday night. But then there was the group of bikers near the entrance. Leather jackets, chrome studs, tattoos, and loud voices. They weren't just here to drink, they were here to be seen. Their energy was different, heavier, louder, more confident than anyone else in the bar. They leaned on the bar rail, smirking at everyone who dared glance at them. Conversations softened when they passed by. Drinks paused, mid-lift. The air around them seemed slightly charged, and yet no one thought there would be trouble. Not tonight. Not with the music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. Everything felt normal, and that's what made it dangerous. Moments like this are always the most dangerous. Because when a place feels safe, people let their guard down. Most confrontations don't start with punches or shouts. They start quietly, with laughter, with casual disrespect, with the assumption that the room is just a normal place. That assumption can be broken in a single instant. Steven observed quietly, as if reading a map of the room. He wasn't paranoid. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was simply aware. Awareness is different from fear. Awareness is noticing the small things. The way a man smirks at his drink, the way his friend shifts in his seat, the way a hand hovers too close to someone else's space. The bartender moved behind the counter, perfectly balanced, pouring shots and sliding beers down to waiting hands. The group of bikers laughed louder, tossing their heads back, exchanging glances that suggested they were about to do something bold or foolish. But nothing had happened yet. The night was still calm. Steven's wife laughed softly at something unrelated, her eyes lighting up with genuine amusement. That small, quiet joy would soon be the spark that tested the patience of the man in the corner. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to become the center of attention in a way that would make every patron feel the shift in energy before anything even happened. To the outside observer, nothing was unusual. The room was filled with noise, movement, and life. People were talking, eating, drinking. A bar like this usually didn't see violence or confrontation, just music and chatter. And that's exactly why the line could be crossed without anyone expecting it. Danger doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wave a flag or sound an alarm. It slips in through noise, laughter, and complacency. And when it arrives, it hits hardest where you least expect it. Steven leaned back slightly in his seat, one hand resting lightly on his wife's, a gesture almost invisible, but loaded with meaning. It was protection, calm assurance. The kind of presence that goes unnoticed until it matters the most. And as the bar continued to buzz around them, as the bikers laughed and flexed their invisible authority, one thing was already happening without anyone realizing it. Tension was building. The calm of the night was only a thin veil, and someone, soon, would tear it away. The question was, who would cross the line first, and what would happen when they did? The night had been loud, alive, and seemingly ordinary, until it wasn't. The biker who had been leaning against the bar, smirking and tossing glances around the room, finally noticed Steven Seagal's wife. She sat quietly, sipping her drink, unaware that she had just become the target of a man who thought disrespect was harmless fun. He leaned closer to his friends, his smirk growing wider, his voice louder. Well, looks like even the tough guy's wife isn't so intimidating, he sneered, intentionally loud enough for her to hear. It was a comment crafted to provoke, to humiliate, to draw attention to himself while mocking someone else. The sound of the insult cut through the music and laughter like a knife. Some patrons froze mid-sentence. A few people frowned, unsure if they should react. Even the bartender paused, towel in hand, watching the subtle shift in the room's energy. It was the kind of moment where you could feel tension coil in the air, thick and invisible. Steven turned his head slowly, almost imperceptibly, his eyes locking onto the man who had just crossed the line, calm, steady, unflinching. Not a hint of anger, not a twitch of impatience, just awareness. The biker noticed the gaze, and for a brief second, there was hesitation, a microsecond of doubt that almost cracked through his bravado. But arrogance is a stubborn shield, and pride overruled caution. He laughed, louder this time, showing no sign that he understood the danger of what he had just done. Then he leaned in closer, voice sharper, crueler, aiming for maximum humiliation. "Come on, old man," he said mockingly. "What are you gonna do? Sit there and stare at me?" A hush fell over the bar. Conversations faltered. A glass of beer wobbled in someone's hand before being set down. The background music seemed to fade, leaving only the charged energy of the room. Phones were quietly raised, capturing the tension like the audience already knew. Something extraordinary was about to happen. Steven's wife looked down, discomfort visible in the way she shifted in her seat. Her eyes flicked to her husband, searching for a hint of reassurance. He met her gaze with a subtle nod, a silent message that she was safe, that he had control, and that no one would cross this line without consequence. The biker, sensing the woman's unease, doubled down. "Relax," he said to her now with mock charm. "You don't need to be scared of me." His tone dripped with condescension. The room winced collectively. It was clear to everyone watching that he was not only mocking Steven Seagal, but he was also trying to assert dominance, to humiliate publicly, to provoke an overreaction. This is the moment when the ordinary world fully dissolved. The calm setup, the casual Friday night, the noise and laughter, they all vanished under the weight of disrespect. Every person in the bar felt it, the shift from normalcy to anticipation. The tension had become almost tangible, like static electricity in the air before a storm. Steven didn't speak immediately. He didn't react with anger. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His calm alone was enough to make people uneasy. The biker, however, couldn't read restraint the same way. He mistook silence for weakness, calm for fear. And so he said it again, louder, sharper, Crueler. A comment designed to provoke. A comment designed to test limits. The bar went completely silent. Not a whisper. Not a single laugh. The hum of conversation vanished. Every eye was on them now. The room collectively leaned forward, sensing the first spark that would ignite the night. This was no longer casual disrespect. This was the beginning of a confrontation, one that could escalate in any direction, and everyone in the room knew it, even if they didn't yet understand just how controlled and precise the response would be. Have you ever watched someone cross a line in public and felt that instant shift in energy, the silence that spreads through a room like electricity? That exact moment is where fear, respect, and anticipation collide. And everyone in that bar was about to witness it firsthand. Steven Seagal remained seated for a moment longer, letting the tension hang in the air like a heavy curtain. The bar was completely silent now. Every conversation had ceased. Every movement slowed. Patrons shifted in their seats, sensing that the quiet was not natural. It was the calm before something extraordinary. He placed a hand gently over his wife's, a subtle gesture meant only for her. "Stay calm," the touch seemed to say. "Nothing will happen to you while I'm here." She felt the reassurance in the warmth of his hand, the weight of experience behind it, years of discipline, years of training, years of knowing exactly how to handle someone like this were all hidden in the quiet of that simple gesture. Steven could end this in a second. He knew it. The biker's arrogance, his overconfidence, his lack of awareness, all of it painted a perfect target in a different scenario. It could have ended in seconds, with chaos, with fear, maybe even with injury. But this was not about proving something. This was about protection. This was about protection, about dignity, about demonstrating that strength is not measured in volume or aggression, but in control. He stood slowly, deliberately, letting every movement speak without shouting. His wife's eyes followed him, wide with a mix of worry and trust. The other patrons, who had been watching silently, leaned forward ever so slightly, aware that the moment had shifted from tension to anticipation. Steven's gaze locked on the biker, calm, steady, unwavering. The look alone carried years of experience, discipline, and quiet power. It said, "I see you, I know what you're capable of, and I know exactly how to respond." He spoke evenly, his voice low but clear, cutting through the silence like a scalpel. "I don't think you should speak to my wife like that." The room seemed to shrink in that instant. The music, the chatter, the clinking glasses, all faded into the background. Every head in the bar turned toward them. Phones were already recording, capturing the tension. Patrons leaned forward, knowing that whatever happened next would be unforgettable. The biker hesitated for a split second. Pride and arrogance warred with a flicker of doubt. But then he laughed, loud and sharp, trying to mask the sudden awareness that he might have miscalculated. "Relax, old man," he sneered. "You're sitting there like a statue. What are you going to do?" Steven did not flinch. He did not raise his voice. He did not react with anger. Not yet. He allowed the biker to see the calm behind his eyes, the restraint in his posture, the discipline that kept his body steady, even as the storm threatened to erupt. In that moment, Steven's inner conflict was visible only to himself. Every muscle knew the potential for action. Every reflex knew how quickly a single step could end the confrontation. Every memory of past fights and lessons in control whispered, "You have the power to act. But do you want to act?" He took a slow, deliberate breath, the kind of breath that signals control, not fear. The kind that says, "I am aware. I am ready. But I choose my moment." Steven knew the crowd's eyes were upon him, and yet he ignored them. He ignored the pressure, the adrenaline, the expectation. This wasn't about proving anything to the bar. It was about doing what was right, protecting someone he cared about, maintaining dignity in the face of blatant disrespect. He placed a subtle, guiding hand on his wife's shoulder, just enough to let her know she was safe. The gesture was quiet, almost invisible, but it carried a depth of meaning that no one else in the room could fully grasp. She understood immediately. Nothing reckless would happen. Everything would be handled with precision. Then, still calm, still deliberate, he repeated the warning, this time firmer, like the final chord of a song before the crescendo. "Step away, apologize, and this ends." Every eye in the bar was fixed on them. The biker smirked, trying to appear confident, but the room could feel the microsecond of doubt flicker behind the bravado. This was the moment of choice, not just for Steven, but for the man who had dared to disrespect him in that silence. The lesson of strength and control was already being taught. Power does not shout. Power does not react immediately. Power waits, observes, and chooses the perfect moment to act. And for the first time, the biker truly realized that he might have underestimated the man sitting calmly in the corner. The quiet man who could end the situation in seconds, but chose not to. Engagement question. Have you ever been in a situation where you had the power to react but had to hold back? What would you do if someone disrespected someone you cared about in public? The tension in the bar had reached a breaking point. The air felt heavier, thicker, like the moment had been stretched taut, waiting for someone to snap it. Every eye was on the corner where Steven Seagal had risen from his seat, calm but unyielding. The biker, sensing a challenge, stepped forward, trying to regain control of a situation that had suddenly shifted against him. "Relax, Grandpa," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You think you're some kind of hero. Sit there and stare all you want. What are you gonna do?" The words hit the room like a spark. Patrons froze mid-motion, glasses paused in midair. Phones were raised, recording, ready to capture the inevitable eruption. Even the bartender, behind the counter, paused with a tray of drinks in hand, sensing that the calm of the night was over. Steven didn't move aggressively. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. He simply stepped forward, just enough to subtly place himself between the biker and his wife. It was a shift so slight that most people wouldn't notice the precision, except that it spoke volumes. Every muscle in his body was calm but prepared, every motion deliberate, every breath controlled. "Step back, apologize. And this ends," he said, voice steady, unwavering. The biker sneered, his arrogance still intact, but a flicker of doubt appeared in his eyes. Pride is stubborn, and he refused to show weakness. Instead, he leaned in and shoved Steven's shoulder, not hard enough to injure, but enough to provoke. The sound of contact echoed through the bar. A collective gasp rose from the patrons. Conversations had already halted, but this single movement amplified the tension. Every head turned toward the corner, every eye wide with anticipation. The room was now completely silent. Steven's step backward wasn't fear, it was shielding, placing his wife safely behind him while keeping the biker in his line of sight. The subtle movement demonstrated control, not retreat. Every observer felt it. The moment had escalated, and the line had clearly been crossed. The biker, emboldened by his shove, raised his voice again, attempting to dominate the situation with volume. "What you gonna cry now?" he taunted, laughing to mask the tiny crack of fear forming in his mind. Phones were out everywhere. Patrons leaned forward, sensing that history was unfolding before them. Not a fight, not a brawl, but a test of control, dignity, and power. Everyone instinctively understood that this confrontation was different. It wasn't about violence. It was about authority. Steven's gaze remained locked on the biker. Calm, focused, unshaken. Every ounce of energy exuded restraint. His inner conflict had resolved. This wasn't about showing dominance through aggression. This was about stopping disrespect, protecting his wife, and teaching a quiet lesson to everyone watching. The biker, failing to read the signals, continued to push. His arrogance was matched only by his ignorance. Another step forward, another shove. But Steven didn't overreact. He subtly shifted his stance, redirecting the biker's momentum, using precision and balance rather than brute force. Every movement was calculated. Patrons leaned forward, eyes wide, hearts racing. The bar had become a theater. The tension was palpable, almost electric. People could feel that a storm was ready to break. But the calm, deliberate control of Steven Seagal had already set the terms. For a fleeting moment, time seemed to slow. The biker realized that the man in front of him wasn't reacting like a normal person. This wasn't anger, rage, or fear. This was authority, discipline, and skill combined. A combination that no shoves, sneers, or taunts could overpower. The shove marked the clear escalation. Disrespect had turned into a direct challenge, and the entire room knew that what came next would define the night, forever imprinting the lesson that strength doesn't roar, it controls. If you were standing there, watching someone disrespect another person you cared about, Would you step in, or would you freeze? Could you hold yourself calm when everyone is watching? The biker smirked, convinced he still had the upper hand. What? Scared, he sneered, raising his hand again, hoping to provoke a reaction. Laughter, forced and uneven, tried to escape from the corners of his mouth, but no one in the bar laughed with him. Every eye in the room was on them. Every conversation had ceased. Phones hovered, recording the tension, capturing the moment when arrogance met calm, when chaos could have erupted, but hadn't. Yet, Steven Seagal didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. His gaze locked on the biker, calm, steady, unwavering. There was no fear, no anger. Only precision. Every muscle in his body was ready, yet relaxed. Every movement was controlled, deliberate, and measured. "You still have time," Steven said quietly, his voice cutting through the heavy silence. The words were soft, almost gentle, but carried a weight no one could ignore. It was a warning and a command, delivered without the need for shouting. The biker ignored the warning. He raised his hand again, more forceful this time, expecting confrontation, expecting fear, expecting chaos. And then, in one fluid motion, Steven acted. There was no shouting, no wild swing, no explosive force, just control, precision. Every movement calculated to achieve the exact result without unnecessary violence. He stepped slightly to the side, subtly redirecting the biker's momentum. The man stumbled forward, caught off balance. The shove that had seemed to challenge authority now only highlighted his own miscalculation. The room gasped. Phones captured every instant. Patrons leaned forward, silent, witnessing the moment when arrogance met calm mastery. Steven didn't follow through with a strike. He didn't threaten, he didn't humiliate. He simply stood his ground, eyes locked, breathing steady, every ounce of his energy radiating controlled authority. "You don't need to be hurt to be stopped," he said, calm and deliberate. "You just need to be out of control." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. And in that moment, everyone in the bar understood something profound. True strength is not loud, aggressive, or reactive. It is calm. It is controlled. It is deliberate. The biker straightened, confusion and shock written all over his face. For the first time, he realized he had miscalculated. His arrogance, his mockery, his attempt to dominate, they had all failed. Not because he was weaker, but because the man in front of him had chosen control over chaos. Security rushed in almost immediately, though Steven didn't need them. The biker's friends pulled him back, his bravado replaced by silent regret. The room remained silent, the kind of silence that comes not from fear, but from witnessing something rare. Authority exercised without aggression, power demonstrated without chaos. Patrons whispered among themselves, awed. Some shook their heads, some simply stared, phones still raised, capturing the lesson that would soon travel far beyond the bar's walls. Steven turned his gaze toward his wife. Her eyes reflected relief and trust. He offered a subtle nod, a gentle reassurance that everything was under control. The moment had passed, yet the lesson lingered. Anger looks powerful, but control commands respect. Chaos is loud, but mastery is silent. Violence is visible, but authority is invisible until it reveals itself in the perfect, decisive moment. No one cheered. No one clapped. The bar was still, quiet, absorbing what had just occurred. The spectacle was not of brute force, but of discipline, not of ego, but of protection, not of rage, but of control. And, in that silence, the lesson spread faster than any punch ever could. The strongest person in the room is not the loudest, nor the fastest, nor the one who shoves first. It is the one who can protect, defend, and stop wrongdoing without losing control, without surrendering to impulse, without giving chaos any foothold. Engagement question: have you ever witnessed someone exercise power without violence? Could you hold that level of control if someone disrespected someone you care about right in front of you? The bar was silent. Not a whisper, not a cheer, not a single clink of a glass. The chaos that had seemed inevitable just moments ago had evaporated, leaving only the stunned stillness of a room that had witnessed something rare. Control without violence, authority without ego, power without chaos. The biker's friends finally pulled him away, muttering excuses that barely concealed their embarrassment. His smug confidence had dissolved into confusion and quiet regret. The arrogance that had carried him into the bar moments before now looked almost foolish in the harsh light of what had just occurred. He had challenged a master and had learned, in the most humbling way, that true power doesn't need to shout. Steven Seagal remained standing, calm, composed, breathing steady. He did not chase the biker. He did not threaten him. He simply returned to his seat, a subtle nod to his wife, a reassurance that the danger had passed. His presence alone had neutralized the threat, protected his loved one, and maintained dignity without a single act of aggression. Patrons looked on, awe-struck. Some whispered quietly to each other, trying to process what they had just seen. Others simply shook their heads in disbelief. Phones still hovered, capturing the scene, ready to spread the story far beyond the walls of the bar. This was not a fight. This was a lesson in strength, discipline, and restraint. Steven's wife exhaled softly, relief visible in her expression. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly, his voice low but full of care. She nodded, her eyes reflecting gratitude and awe. In that moment, nothing else mattered. The lesson had been delivered, silently but unmistakably. Respect is earned, not taken. By the next morning, the video had gone viral. Not because anyone had been hurt, not because chaos had erupted. People shared it because it was rare, because it demonstrated something the world often forgets. The strongest person in the room is not the loudest, not the fastest, and not the one who reacts first. It is the one who protects, commands authority, and maintains control even when provoked. Comment sections filled with awe, admiration, and reflection. People debated, could I have stayed that calm? Could I have shown that kind of discipline in the face of blatant disrespect? Some were inspired. Others were reminded that strength is more than brute force. The bar returned to its usual rhythm eventually, but the energy had changed. Patrons walked taller, aware that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Bartenders recounted the story to friends later, shaking their heads in disbelief. Even the group of bikers would remember this night, not for humiliation, but for the lesson they had learned the hard way. Arrogance meets its match in calm mastery. Steven leaned back in his seat, sipping his drink, as if nothing had happened, and yet, everything had happened. Every moment of tension, every flicker of doubt, every silent gasp, it had all contributed to a lesson that extended far beyond the walls of that bar. It was a moment that reminded everyone watching. That strength is not anger, it is not speed, it is not intimidation. Strength is control. Strength is protection. Strength is knowing that you have the power to act, but choosing the moment, the method, and the message carefully. And that, more than anything else, is what made the story unforgettable. If you believe real strength comes from discipline, not rage, type respect in the comments. Would you have had the courage to stand there? Could you have remained calm under that pressure? Because the night proved one undeniable truth. The strongest person in the room is not the loudest. It's the one who can protect without losing control, who can end a threat without creating chaos, and who can teach a lesson without ever raising a hand. The video spread across social media, not for violence, not for chaos, but for the lesson of the night. The lesson that would linger in minds long after the bar returned to normal. And somewhere in the corner of that bar, the biker silently learned something he would never forget. Some battles are won not by aggression, but by calm mastery, precision, and the quiet authority of someone who truly understands strength.